Don't try to be an artist all at once. Be very much of a student. Charles Hawthorne, artist and teacher. This is The Artful Painter, art lessons for artists, collectors, and people who love arts. I'm on a journey to learn how to paint, and I invite you to join me on that journey. Now, so far on this journey, we have talked with 6 artists to date who have generously shared what they know about painting. And I don't know about you, but I have been so inspired by their conversations. Now, today, your art lesson comes from yet another fantastic artist and instructor, Gàbor Svagrik. He is a landscape painter and instructor based in Tucson, Arizona. While adhering to the time-honored traditions and fundamentals of a long list of artists who have come before him, Gàbor readily embraces the use of technology to help design his paintings, and he uses technology to help share what he knows about painting with other artists. He is the founder of Tucson Art Academy Online, a fantastic resource of online artist mentoring programs and instructional videos. Also, along with fellow artist Phil Stark, Gàbor is a co-founder of Easel Insight, yet another fantastic resource for learning the craft of art. Gàbor has a passion for working with students both in person and online. Not only does Gàbor teaches the fundamentals of painting, and he really emphasizes that in this episode, but he also helps students to learn to use modern tools, software like Adobe Photoshop and Lightroom to design good paintings. As you listen to Gàbor in this episode, you quickly sense that he has an intense desire to teach, educate, and inspire. My name is Carl Olson, and this is The Artful Painter. So let me see if I can try this and get it right.
Okay.
Gàbor Svagrik. Is that
pretty good?
Oh,
yeah.
Whoa. All right.
Well, it is good. I pronounce it Svagrik in English, but Gàbor is what, if you say Gàbor, that's, in our circle of, the artists that I hang with, if you say Gàbor, I'm the only one around. So,
that's a Hungarian name, it sounds like.
Is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very traditional, like Mike or Bob or any English. Yeah.
Yeah. Carl Olson is the John Smith of Sweden. So.
That's right. There you go.
Yeah. How long have you been in the States?
We moved here in 1983. I was 13. I have 2 sisters. I'm the middle child. And we moved here in 1983. We moved to Illinois, and it was still communism back then. So my dad decided to move the family over, and we stayed with my uncle, who immigrated back in the late 60s. So we stayed with them that first summer there, and then, in 1983.
What was your path to fine art?
My grandmother, my mom's mom, she painted, and that was her. She really just loved painting. And she wasn't a professional artist, but again, she just loved painting. And that's growing up, I spent a lot of time with her, with my grandparents. And that's where I saw my first painting. And she used to also paint these little plates, and she allowed me to paint on the plate. I was like probably 7, 8 years old at the time when I started noticing.
Oh, man, that's neat. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and also, so her, my grandmother's sons immigrated to America. They were sending her art supplies back to Hungary because it was very difficult to get. And then they also sent some books back. And that's where I saw my first, I didn't even know it was Remington, but I saw these horses and cowboys and stuff. And so that's where I saw imagery for the first time of the American West, if you would. Yeah.
Would that have been a Harold McCracken book or?
I don't know what it was, but I remember there was, so hard to say. I was so young, but imagery captured, my imagination, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's, I can see why. I remember, I think it was my 4th grade teacher that gave me a book. I think it was How the West Was Won. Okay. Which was by Howard McCracken. It wasn't Frederick Remington art in that particular book, but that led to Frederick Remington and others. So I fell in love with the West. Though I live in the East, which is really
Good shot here.
so. Well, that's neat. Right now at the Booth Museum, they've got a beautiful exhibit of Frederick Remington.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's
Nice.
really good. How would you describe yourself?
I like to teach and educate, inspire. I guess that's kind of my strength, which I didn't know was. And of course, just creating and just enjoying beautiful things in life that through nature, of course, and as a landscape painter and anything just designed beautifully too, just inspiring me. So when I talk to my students, I don't always stay per se in art. I try to relate things in general in life to people. I think that sometimes they understand that better, and then I hone it into painting. So, I guess I like to inspire, and I'm curious. I guess a curious person. So.
Oh, very good. Yeah. Well, you can tell just from what you said there, your love of teaching, love of helping people. That's a good technique. I come from a family of teachers. My mother was a school teacher. My sister, my daughter-in-law. So I have a great respect for people who love to teach like that. And one of the things that they use is to relate something from life to what you're learning, and that helps you make that connection there.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you're new to painting, and that to kind of gap that bridge there metaphorically sometimes with things, but you have to have a big enough well to draw from. I think that's the thing too, that we have to have some years behind us, real life experiences to talk about these things, and that's what I see sometimes younger teachers. They're so young that there's not enough. Technically, they're good, but I look at it more philosophically sometimes things than just painting. So
yeah, I'm just now beginning to learn how to paint, and so that life experience really does seem to color my approach to it, which I enjoy.
Yeah. You have. I tell my students that are a little bit older, that they get into a little bit of an older stage in their life, that you actually have an advantage over younger students because of that. What you just told me. So those life experiences.
What is your medium of choice when you paint? What are you painting with? Is it oils, watercolors?
So I went to the American Academy of Art. I was 18 years old, and I studied watercolor there with Irving Shapiro.
Shapiro. Wow.
Yeah, he was a. Have you heard of him? Or?
Yeah, I've got a book in my library. It's called How to Make a Painting.
That's it. That's the book. I should have had him sign it. I'm still mad at myself. And he passed away about 3 years after I went to the school. It was sad. And but he was he had an influence on me. The first time I saw like a quote unquote professional artist, doing a demonstration, I was hooked. So I studied with him for 2 years with
that's awesome.
Mr. Shapiro still to the day, Mr. Shapiro. And then in my 20s, early 20s, my dad was actually saying, like, why don't you paint some oils? That's what you see in museums. I'm like, yeah, but I don't care about the medium. I believe in the craft, the end product, not the medium. But I mean, of course I knew about oil painting, but then I just thought, hey, and I was reading back then, it was more magazines and stuff and books. And I'm like, yeah, it is a beautiful medium. But how do I go about it? I didn't take any classes with oils. So I figured I kind of basically fumbled my way through it basically. And I figured out at a young age that I have to paint from life as a landscape painter to get better. So I dragged, I bought one of these French easels and got out there and fumbled my way through it. So after that, I kind of stopped. I kind of transitioned out of, in a way, I don't know if that's the right term, but I was still painting some watercolors in my 20s, but then oils kind of took over, and also pastels. So basically mainly oils now, but I'll be having a newer studio. So I'm going to have I'm going to go back to watercolor and pastel where you have stations where I don't have to tear it down. That's my plan. So I still enjoy the medium watercolor, but mainly oils right now. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's beauty in all of the different mediums that are out there. I have a hard time with I love pastels. I can't stand to touch them though.
Yeah, they're messy. I have students that come into my classes that are pastel artists, or they email me like, "Gbor, I want to take your class, but I paint with pastels." I said, "That's totally fine." And once they come into the class, I kind of encourage them that oils are actually it's sort of in between. It's closest to oils. And I encourage them to at least get the three colors, the pre-primaries and white, and start mixing, because, with pastels, you have set of colors versus oils. You have to really think about mixing. So it really stretches your knowledge, even though it might not be the primary medium if you're a pastel artist, but I would highly encourage even pastel artists to use oils, at least with the primary colors. So,
yeah. Do you find that having started in watercolors, that there is something that medium offers to teach someone that works in oils?
Yeah, I mean, with watercolors, your drawing has to be, you have to have pretty decent drawing skills, because that's your framework. There's not much room to move around. It's very spontaneous. And it taught me that it is, I have to really think about before I put down a brush mark. That's definitely taught me, but you have to allow the medium to be what it is. And I see people controlling watercolor, tightening up on them, and I don't think that they're not allowing the medium to sing. So I think we need to allow the medium to be itself, I guess. But oils is so versatile; you can go as tight, loose, wherever. So that's why oil is definitely the king or queen of the mediums, because it's so versatile.
I like that expression you used. You have to allow the medium to sing. I don't think I've heard that before, but that's quite beautiful.
It is. It's a beautiful medium, and there's some watercolor artists that are doing it that I see out there, but very, very few of them that are allowing the watercolor medium to be on its own, to let it. Don't control it, because our tendency to control everything, in life too. It's like we want to control everything, and watercolor is definitely one of these sort of a little bit more wild mediums out there. So, yeah.
Well, how can we make oil paintings sing? How can we make that medium sing?
Well, one thing I do see with students is that, and when I'm making the statement, I was there too, that we try to, what's it, Stan? Yeah, Stan Miller. He's a watercolor artist. He said that usually the only students I have, which are like 10 or 11 or 12-year-old kids that he teaches sometimes, and he teaches adults too, they're the only ones that bring in references to me that are too simple. So as adults, we bring in complex things, right? Yeah. So I'm kind of backtracking to your question, but it's learning to simplify, and that's design. So a lot of times people ask about brushwork, where they need to be way back in design, and it's just our natural tendency, because we get excited to paint, right?
You want to get in there and start mixing colors and dabbing that surface right away. Yeah,
you might have looked at some beautiful painting of some really good artists and like, I want to do that. It's just, but I think if it's not working real well, the problem is actually, you got to backtrack a little bit. That's where the problem lies. So we got to fix that problem first. So our tendency to jump ahead of our feelings take over rather than the technical aspect of things. When you look at something, feelings should hit you, but then as a painter, you have to step back and analyze it. Will this work as a painting? So, and that's tough because we have feelings. We're human.
Well, that's true. I mean, it'd be like, a composer of music. There's a certain feeling that they want to convey, but they've got to have a language or design, if you will, to express that music in. There's a discipline that goes with it to allow them to express that that feeling.
And it's interesting because in any field, any work that anybody does, there's fundamentals. So I don't know why in painting sometimes people don't think that there is.
Well, and maybe it's overwhelm. So the premise of this show is, there's a lot of podcasters like yourself and others that are very experienced now. They've had a long time to accumulate the skills that are needed to paint. And I'm a beginner. I'm right here at the beginning, and it's fascinating for me because there's a lot of these different pieces. Academically that they need to go. That you should draw. Design. I'm beginning to build that vocabulary, but it's like riding a bicycle. Remember when you first learned how to ride a bicycle? This looks simple, man, but it's not.
Yeah. I took a class, a workshop from Skip Whitcomb years back, and Skip said that he had a transplant surgeon in his class, and Skip said, "Wow, that's incredible. That's such a difficult job." And he said, "That's really not that hard. I went to medical school, and I got to connect this here to this part here." He goes, "This is hard. Painting is hard." That's what he said. So it's kind of a funny little
that is, I guess that is a good analogy because, that there's certain things that are technical and they only work one way, but other things you're making decisions because you are the creator. You're making something out of nothing. So, yeah.
It is. That's why I see, this is my own philosophy here, but I see young, when I say young, let's say in their 20s, really good technical painters in the sense like figurative. They draw really well and all that. But it's very, very rare to see a good young, like I'm talking 20s, landscape painter. Just the landscape artist, it's a longer maturity. You look back, Clyde Aspevik's works. I'm guessing from what I can sense, it's more in his 40s was when he started hitting his stride. So it's just a longer process with landscape painting. I still can't put my finger on why. I think it's more poetry. I think that's but it's tricky because as we just discussed, on the top of it, you see this beautiful brush marks, right? You see poetry on top, but underneath it's still fundamentals. So,
So what are the core fundamentals as you know them?
Yeah, it's the same thing as you probably at the booth when you from these guys. It has to start with design. It has to start with design before you even put the pencil or pen or brush or whatever you're using on the paper or whatever medium you're using. It has to start with design, and then follows with drawing, and then value, and then color. And I tell my students, it's an order. Literally, that is the order. If you jump ahead on one of them, your paintings will suffer. And there's a good chance the reason your paintings are not working out because you skipped one of these. You skipped ahead. Color is important. Value is important. All those things are important. But, I can't stress it enough. It's an order. It has to come in those steps. I have this is a collector I was talking to, and he collected all sorts of things, and he ended up with painting. It sort of seems like that's his thing, and I think he found something that is so deep that painting has that other things he collected in the past. I don't know. He kind of, in his mind at least, he reached it. But something with painting is such a, I don't know. Same thing with, poetry and music, and it's at a certain level, there's so much more there once we learn the basics.
Well, I've been thinking about that. I started a couple of years ago, thinking about this idea of analog art, art that you touch, art that's made by hand. And I really think there's a backlash to the digital digitalization of everything. And everything is technology and ephemeral. And that's okay. These are fun tools. And I know you, just before we started recording, we were talking about some of the fun things that you can do with technology. But everything that's produced digitally, it's just ephemeral. It's there. Once the electrons die, they're gone. You don't have it. But a painting, you go to the museum and you see a painting by Frederick Remington, as you mentioned before. Yeah. You're seeing his thumbprints. You're seeing his brush. You're connected to that artist in such a physical way, a tangible way.
Yeah. I have this discussion definitely with artists. I don't know if you know John Burton's work.
Yes. Yeah.
John is a dear friend of mine, and he's been doing some digital art, just really awesome stuff. And exactly. We have these discussions on it. He's a great painter. And I'm kind of on the same page as you are, is that you have, when you create a digital quote unquote painting, it's zeros and ones. You can replicate it 1 trillion times, right? It's the same thing. There's no such thing as original, quote unquote original, with it versus a painting. It really is one of
exactly.
Its kind. Yeah. That there's technologies that might be coming along where they can maybe say, hey, this was the original. I think that's going to be happening with digital, that was the original one that artists worked on, and these are replicas. If they can do that's going to be interesting, which I think it's possible. But as you said, the actual physical aspect of paint, and oil paint on the top of that, where you actually have depth, literally physical depth in it. That's unique. It's still, I think that's why paintings are going to be around for a long time. Even though as digital is coming in faster and faster, I really believe that people are going to be always interested in that physically made thing, whatever it is. It could be, whatever it is, but especially in painting. Yeah. It seems like to me, it's not a battle. It's more one helping the other. That's the way I look at it. I think some artists are looking at it like, man, this thing is going to just, look at these people. That's not, I'm like, I really don't, who knows? I don't know. I think it's a great tool, and for illustration, obviously, but even for illustration, look at those illustrations of the past. They're actually, they're in museums now. And I don't know about these new digital illustrations. They're zeros and ones on a hard drive.
I agree with what you're saying. I actually like both. Okay. But I think what it is the connection. The thing that ties it, that adds value to it, seems to be the physical tie to the artist. So I think this is the mistake that Thomas Kinkade made with his art is, people thought they were buying art that his hands touched. And then that whole empire collapsed when it was all these interns and people working, putting the dabs of paint to, and they weren't his, but they thought, I know someone that bought one of these things and they thought they were getting something that he had touched. And he didn't even come anywhere near. That's not to discount him as an artist. He was a good artist, but I'm just saying that it's that connection. And man, I'm getting off on a big tangent here.
And it's not, fine art is not scalable.
That's it. Yeah.
If we're looking at it that way, if you're a dealer, right, and it's not scalable. If an artist that paints for 50 years. And this is a really good artist that I was talking to. I don't want to say the name, but it said, how many pieces do you produce a year? It says X amount. Basically, we funneled it down. Per year, he's happy about maybe with 10 pieces a year. Yeah. Okay, that's it times, 50. So what? At the end of 50 years, it's 50 pieces. If it's 10, that's incredible, right? That's a life. That's their creative life. That's after they pass, they created about maybe 50, let's say 100 top-notch pieces. So, yeah, it's not like digital where you can reproduce 1 million of them, so it's that's why the value of it too, I think, monetary value of a good painting. And not to get into the business of that, there's that too. Because of that, it has some kind of value that no other product has. It's one of its kind, one of a kind.
I just did a documentary last year called One of a Kind.
Really?
Yeah, it was about a person who was a wood turner, and that was the thing. Is his premise was each thing he made by hand, and it was one of a kind. Whether it was, and it wasn't perfect, but it had all the imperfections and mistakes of that one particular piece of art that he would make. I like that. I just like that line.
Yeah, one of a kind, and there's lies the difficulty of making a living, right? As an artist, it's sort of this double-edged sword. But that's why artists teach, and they might have other things doing. So people think that fine artists, even the top ones, that's all they do all the time, and they do spend a lot of time at the easel, but they have some other things sometimes going on too. So it's not, yeah.
And you epitomize that. You not only paint, but as you mentioned from the outset, you teach, and you've also embraced technology in the painting process. So let's talk about that a little bit. I noticed one of your courses. I haven't taken it. I haven't bought it yet, but it's Photoshop and Lightroom Simplified for Artists. And I thought, well, this is interesting. How can Photoshop and Lightroom help an artist that's making these analog, not scalable pieces? What's your approach here?
My approach with it is more on the angle of what do we do with all these photographs that we're taking. We can take so many photographs now so fast, right? So how do we organize the photos? So it's number one, it starts more with organization, so they're not randomly thrown on a hard drive somewhere, right? And that's why Lightroom, when Adobe came out with Lightroom in 2007, they just sent me an email. Hey, you want to try this? I'm like, yeah, I guess. If photographers use it, then it must be good for me as a painter. And I tried it and I liked it. And so in 2007, since I've been with Lightroom since 2007, so I saw its progression. And in 2007 was the iPhone. That's when the first iPhone came out in 2007. So we were not really taking, much pictures. Well, that was the beginning, I should say, when we started taking pictures with our phones. And then, so we have so many pictures. How do we organize them? Number one, and Lightroom does just an awesome job with that. So that's one part I teach with that course. And the other part is Photoshop. Is how can we take a tree, make it smaller, bigger, move a house. That's what Photoshop does. So these two programs are somewhat same but different. And that Photoshop's strength is design, where you can move objects. And so for design purposes, it's actually a helpful tool before you get into the actual physical painting part. And that's the part I kind of just basically 4 tools. That's all you need to know in Photoshop, because Photoshop is so daunting when you look at it. That's why I titled it For Artists, because when you want to design, you just want to design and you move on, you want to paint. That's kind of what we want to do, right?
Right. Yeah.
I'm coming from that mindset of just show me what I need to know, the 4 big things, and let me move on. And so that's I simplified it down after using these tools of the things that I believe that a painter needs to know and not more. You can play around with it after. There's a lot of things in there, but I try to simplify it down to the things that a painter needs to just understand, some fundamental things with these tools.
Well, when you use Photoshop to design a painting, are you going to turn around and use that as your reference for the painting? Is that how that works?
Yeah, I do that. Yep, mm-hmm. I absolutely do. So you can do it in Photoshop. You can say, hey, I have this. You look at your physical canvas and say, I have a square canvas, like a 20 by 20. And I'm looking at this photograph that's a 16:9 ratio. And well, obviously it's not going to fit on a 20:20. So with Photoshop, I can bring the image, literally put it on. I can create a canvas, it's called in Photoshop, like the actual canvas I would be painting on, 20:20. And then I bring in the image onto the image that I like onto this 20:20 virtual canvas and see how it fits in. And I start moving the photograph around. And obviously there could be maybe space on top or bottom, and that's one of the things that's pretty neat with Photoshop, that we can do that. We can create our virtual canvas that we're going to be actually physically painting on and bring in an image that might not fit into that, but let's see how it's going to, lay out onto my future physical canvas that I'm going to be painting on. That's one of the things that I use it for.
I want to ask you, what makes a good reference photo?
What makes a good reference photo?
How can I make better reference photos? I guess that's what I'm trying to ask.
So with photography, you're at some point we're stuck. Like you can't. Well, with photo, you're not stuck anymore. Actually, it's Photoshop. You can manipulate, but out of the box, when you're clicking away, with your photographs, what I look for, and I think most artists, even the ones that you were with at the booth, is those large, simple shapes, basically. And what is that? What is that large, simple shape? Large, simple shapes are not a bunch of broken up, different values within the shape itself. You can have broken up values that are close in value, but you want those values to be close to each other. So you're looking for these large, big shapes. If I'm not sure if I'm making sense of what is that, right? And that's kind of where the examples from a teacher kicks in. I have actually, and I'm not plugging my own blog here, but there's a one I did where I have the photograph on the left, and I have the finished painting on the right. I think those are powerful, right? Because you get to see what the photograph was and what the painting, how, what it became. But if anything, even if it's not as simple, you can't get the simple shapes. I simplify it because, again, it beat me up so many times, right? It's sort of that putting in the time and effort into this that I know that will not work in a painting. I tell my students all the time, it might look cool in a photograph, but it will not translate into a painting well. And that's your question. But basically large, simple shapes. If that's what you want to be looking for when you're scouting outside. And that's why I believe in design is so important before you do anything, is you're looking for those large, simple shapes. And if they're not there, or it's sort of there, then you have to sort of invent and simplify down to make it work in a painting. There's a difference between the photography world and the painting world. And when you put it into a painting. So, and I'm trying to really simplify this for you here, but large, simple shapes. I wish there was more examples of paintings out there from here's the photo reference and here, here's the, what I did, but out of the box, I'm looking for that. I don't just, I used to do that. I used to snap around a whole bunch of pictures, and that was back in the slide days. You have to develop it. So it's like insult to injury, right? You got to develop these bad photographs. So as your photography gets better, your paintings will get better too. It's interesting. I look back and I took the dumbest photographs, but so there's definitely photography and painting too. A good photographer will look at these things too. Yeah, there's a correlation between the two.
Well, I think a good photographer does the same thing as a painter in some respects, in that, they try to simplify. They try to take the eye to focus in on something that's, makes a statement. You can take a big wide angle shot of something, but where does the eye go?
photographers would love a painter in their class because they have a better understanding of design.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing that it's tough to teach, right? They'll teach you the f-stop and all that stuff, the mechanical parts, but design is a little more emotional too, a little bit.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's called, I found it looking, it's June 4th, 2016 when I posted it. It's called How Much Detail is Too Much. It's on my blog post if somebody can, it's
right.
a second page, How Much Detail is Too Much. That's why I have the finished painting with the photo reference. And the photo reference is fairly complicated, a lot of stuff, and how I simplified it down too. Yeah, large shapes, big shapes. And it's practice too. Just go through your imagery, start pulling up images that you feel that could work. And this is where the online class too, this is part of that too. You can upload an image. You say, hey, Laura, here's an image. That's what you think this is going to work. So you can ask your instructor before you get into the painting. And we encourage that. Don't start jumping into the painting right away. It's, so.
Well, that reminds me of the first workshop I ever went to. It was with Matt Smith. And, he asked us to bring in photo references. And, I'm a photographer. This is a piece of cake, man. But no. He said, "What? How are you going to paint that?" But I learned from that. I said, okay, so there is such a thing as a good reference photo or a better reference photo to help you. There's no substitute for painting in life. That's true. Yes. But sometimes you just don't have that luxury. So no. Yeah, that's good. What do you shoot with, by the way? What are you doing most of your photography with?
So this kind of ties back a little bit with Adobe, that training that I'm doing, is because Lightroom in late 2017, early 2018, they introduced Lightroom CC, which they confused the heck out of everybody. Yeah. I'm like, when can you call it something else?
Lightroom Classic, Lightroom CC. Come on, folks.
And so, but they saw what the heck is happening, that we use our phones, right? So much. So I would have to say, and I'm sure you know this saying, that the best camera is the one that's always with you, right? So, which is the phone now. And I probably take more images, definitely nowadays, with my phone than any other camera. But I do have a DSLR with an interchangeable lens. So that's one of the only things that the phone still does not have, is the zoom in capability. That I don't know if they can ever have that, because it's more of a physical thing. So I still urge any painter to have a DSLR with the interchangeable lens, kind of get an 18 to like 250 lens. They have those lenses now that have that focal length in one lens. If you're going to get one lens, and you're good to go.
Yeah, I almost think shooting at 50 millimeter, using a 50 millimeter lens on a full frame DSLR is probably about the closest to human eye interaction, because then when you start shooting telephoto, then you get foreshortening, and I mean, that can be an interesting effect. I saw some paintings by, Russell Case, and he used foreshortening to good effect in some of his paintings, which were just fantastic. But you just have to be aware that the lens changes the way the scene is rendered. It's not like the way your eye sees it. So
correct. Yeah. So again, we're going back always. It's like fundamentals back.
There you go. The fundamentals. I like it.
The fundamentals. You can call this the fundamental stuff.
Yeah. All right. And I guess it's important to state that you're not just painting from the photo references. You mentioned earlier that the importance of painting from life. So what you do painting from life is informing the decisions that you make in working from your photo references.
Correct. Yeah. So I've been painting outside for 25 plus years now. So I put in the time so I can translate my knowledge, which is I call it the well. The well is life. That's what I call it, the life experience. Your actually observation from nature with your own eyes. That's the well. So when we begin to paint, that well doesn't have much water in it, right? So we need to start filling up that well, and that is observation from life. Doesn't matter if it's life drawing, still life, it's just from life. So we got to fill up that well in order to have pieces in the studio from a photo reference, as we just discussed, to have that sort of that poetry, that looseness that sometimes we want. Generally, I don't have students coming into my class, by the way, say, "Hey, Gbor, you know what? I'm really, really super loose. I want to tighten up." It doesn't happen. So, yeah, the working from life stuff is it's really important that sometimes students miss, or they don't want to put the effort towards it. You know?
Yeah, the effort it does take effort. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And the older you get, the heavier the kit becomes. It seems like so. It is a challenge.
That's still life. That's why I say set up some pots and pans and just light it.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's from life. You don't have to drag your stuff outside. It's okay.
Yeah. I did that. They weren't great paintings, but I sure learned a lot. Oh my goodness. That was, I painted a painting a day, a 9x12. I should have gone smaller, but anyway, I did 9x12 and it was fun. It was hard, but it was fun. So I learned from it. So that's a good suggestion. Anything in life that's hard, it's basically that's got a bigger fruit to it at the end. That's usually how things are. It's the hardest things that bring the most fruit. Well, that's the thing. Even the way I said that, right? I'm saying, oh, it's hard. I'm justifying. The problem is, I think most of us want things to be easy. But all the good things are hard. Yeah. I wanted the easy way. What's the easy way? And it's, I think, what is it, George? Yeah, George Strickland. I'm sure you know his work, or I'm not sure if you know George Strickland's work. I'm not familiar with him. Yeah. Look up George's work, but he's phenomenal. And George said art is a slow process. It's like it's the same thing as similar as watching a child grow up. I think it was well said. That could be an 18 to 21 year process. It's an analogy, so don't get scared. It's not be patient. I was at we're in Chicago with my wife, and they asked me to talk at my school, which was really neat. I told the students, I said, be patient. I said, that's one of the things that you need to do, because this stuff takes time. We live in this faster paced, social media, instant gratification world more and more, but fine art doesn't move on that pattern. It just, as you said in the beginning, it's an analog thing. And it takes just time. Just be patient. Don't sit around, but work. But it just takes a little longer than, some other things in life sometimes. So be patient. Yeah. I mean, who'd want to drink a wine that was made in a day? I mean, it's not possible. You can't do it. Yeah. A whiskey that's aged 12 years or 14 years. There's just a lot of things that there's quality behind it. There's time behind it. Yes, absolutely. I don't think that's ever going to change. Fundamentals are fundamentals. I believe in fundamentals with painting. There's no such thing as teaching art. Actually, the term art school is not a right term. Really? It should be fundamental school. Okay. Yeah, because art is poetry. That happens later in life, later when you have the skills. This is interesting. I hadn't thought of it like this. It's the same thing as in writing. Like, I think this analogy, most people that are listening would understand very clearly. You have your descriptive writing, like textbook writing, and then you have poetry. So you're saying that the river was 20 feet away from the rocks on the edge, and the trees were 50 feet tall, and then the light was coming at a 45 angle, right? That's the descriptive writing. Right. And then the poet would say the morning light hit through the haze of the air as the river was winding down the valley, right? So it's the same thing in the sense you're describing the same thing. So that is the difference between a painter and an artist, if that makes sense. Wow, that's profound. I hadn't really thought of that. I have thought of, teaching is more like coaching sometimes. Just you've got to guide the person in the right direction. And you're right, the art would be the expression that's within that person.
Yeah, but we got to learn how to walk.
Oh,
first.
Man, isn't that the truth?
I tell my students this, and I don't like to. I'm very passionate about teaching, but at the same time, I don't want to give them like false hopes. Like I like when people tell me like, "Hey, this is it. This is what you need to do to get better." And for the most part, I believe my students have always appreciated that. So it's I'm not a mean person. I just like to tell them that, hey, you have to have these things down first in order to get to this. I'm sorry, there's no shortcuts.
Gbor, you mentioned having a lot of students. I want to ask you, what makes a good student?
What makes a good student is listening, for sure. Curiosity, listening, curiosity. Yeah. I'd rather have a student that they might not have the experience, but they're listening to my suggestions and they're following through with it, at least for the class, in the class. And then after that, I can't really see what they're doing. But I always enjoy those students that are listening to at least what I'm suggesting. Try it while you're studying with me, and then you'll be on your own. But I think that makes a good student. Always love the process. Basically, just love. It's like gardening, I guess, where your back is killing you and you got dirt on your hand and all these, it's hot and humid and whatever it is. But
are you speaking from experience?
I don't mind. My wife is a bigger gardener, but yeah. And then once that bush or tree is blooming and it's bringing its fruit, like you're sitting there, standing, and it's like, man, that's beautiful. But you forget about the pain, right? Your back pain and
of course.
And all that stuff is gone. You don't think about it. Yeah.
There's nothing like making a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich from your own garden. Well, you have to buy the bacon, but hey. Yeah. But some people grow their own bacon too, so
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. It's when you have that. When we make something with our hands from raw material, I think that's so. I don't think that's going to ever go away. I think that's the creativity where we take a raw material. Doesn't matter if it's wood, paint, or whatever. All these things are vehicles, by the way. It could be writing, it could be ink of the pen. These are just vehicles. That's all they are. Paint is a vehicle. If it's watercolor or pastel or they're just vehicles to our expressions. That's all it is.
One of the things I noticed when I was first trying to find sources to learn from, it seems like there's this huge market for, I don't know, for lack of a better word, this feel good or expression painting. They're slapping paint on the canvas and then they're and they're running their fingers through the paint and there's special music playing and candles lit. And if you like that kind of thing, I'm not trying to put it down, but it just wasn't my cup of tea, but it just seems like a lot of people are viewing painting as therapy as opposed to actually creating the craft of making a painting, which I think is even better. I want to hear what you think about this.
No, it's the same thing as we discussed is, just because you buy a paintbrush and paint doesn't make you an artist. It doesn't. You're just still learning the fundamentals. Ken Oster on our online academy, Ken was teaching an online course called Intellect and Passion, which is a perfect title, right?
Intellect and Passion. Okay,
intellect, yeah, Intellect and Passion, because intellect, it has to start with intellect, but intellect has to die away to passion, right? So as you're creating, but the intellect has to be there, which is the fundamental thing. You're looking at it as this proportions, the sky too much to the foreground, and this is building, taking away the focal point from this or that. So that's more the intellectual part. And then that has to be first, and then passion kicks in. So you can't have intellect and passion while you're painting together. They're going to battle back and forth, and one needs the other. The passion needs intellect first. I believe, I believe that because one needs the other one first before it moves on. So you can't have passion and no intellect. So I don't know. Am I making sense?
Yeah, you do. Here's a trope.
Going deep. You're going deeper.
You are deep, man. but this is something that resonates with me because, see, you watch a Hollywood movie or a television show or whatever. Yeah. What do they say? Follow your heart. Follow your heart. But where's the mind in all of this? Because the heart is treacherous. It can really lead you in the wrong direction without guidance. So the intellect and the heart together, I think the two are needed. You need the two together.
Yeah. Even in, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but they think sometimes people, well, he's a fine artist. He doesn't, he just paints, he's not that bright. I'm like, the artists that I know, they're very bright people, extremely, bright, intellectual people. So that's versus you say, oh, well, he's a doctor. Yeah. And yeah, so I don't know, which, it depends. It's a cultural thing too. Other cultures, artists, once they, they create, hopefully, really good art, when I call art, they're really highly respected, and other cultures, not as much. Yeah. Kind of interesting.
Well, I hope when I grow up, I'll be a fine artist. That's my goal.
The process. Enjoy the process.
It's fun.
When you get lost in it, that's when you have something. When you're like, time flies by. I'm sure you have that when you're painting. It's like, man, an hour went by. What happened? That's great.
You're right. You got to enjoy the process, and I do. I enjoy experimenting with the materials, getting to learn how they work, and I'm still in that phase where I want the muscle memory to develop so that I don't have to think about mixing the color or the skill of drawing and things like that. So it takes time. So the way I found you was through a search for podcast about art. And so I found Easel Insight, and then I found Matt Smith had some videos that you had hosted on as well. So I thought these were wonderful tools. So I just thought it'd be good to talk about that a little bit, how you got into that and what students can expect. Yeah,
we have that was with Phil Stark and I. That's Easel Insight, and it's a membership site, and we help painters out in there, and that's where the podcast, you probably heard of the podcast, Phil and I just sit down and talk about certain topics, more nuts and bolts, I guess, in with Easel Insight, and Matt's is Matt's is so that's Tucson Art Academy Online.
Okay, so I was mixing the two up there, right?
As long as they're listening. And so Tucson Art Academy Online is where we it's sort of we call it digital downloads, where you purchase it and it's yours, and it's a straight up demonstration by some really, really good artists. And the other part of our academy is the actual teaching part, where you actually are in this 1 year long mentoring program with the artist, individual artists. Right now we have Ken Backus, Laura Robb, Simon Cogan, he's a sculptor, and we have Kali Wisson. You want a little nugget here for your listeners? Matt is coming aboard as a teacher.
Nice.
So you're actually probably the first one to know. It's not a top secret. We're still kind of wrapping up some things with it. So, we want to bring quality, artists to you in wherever you are. You could be anywhere in the world and still be in touch with the artist for a full year and have sort of an ongoing. We call it mentoring because, as we discussed earlier, it takes time. So I still believe in physical workshops. They're good. They're awesome. The 4 to 5 day and what you did there, it's really, really good. But I believe when you combine it with the online learning, which is our program is a year long, it really has an impact on someone between these two things. With online, there's things that the artist, the teacher can do on your image that it's not possible in a physical class. So that is the big kicker here, is when I'm using, when you send an image in and I would look at it, I have the ability with the digital tool to go over it and using layers kind of back and forth, showing like, here, this is where it should be. So again, as a teaching tool, digital really is so good. It's so powerful for a student. That's where I'm still amazed. If I wish I had that when I was going to art school, this type of thing where my teacher would have showed you like, see this? Well, it should be like this, and back and forth, like showing you that. That's sort of, that. Well, so that's,
the closest to that was Famous Artist School.
It's in a way, I did it when I was 16 years old.
Did you really? Yeah.
Yeah. My parents we went down to Chicago, and it was in a hotel room. Like, we met up with a guy. It was kind of weird. And, we're going to sign you up here. And this is it was expensive. And my parents were nice enough to pay for it. And I sent it in. Yeah. My assignments, it's the same concept, except now we have this digital tool. Yeah.
No, I bought 2 sets of Famous Artist School dirt cheap on eBay. I thought, that was a fantastic course.
Yeah. It was started by really good illustrators. That's kind of the history of the Famous Artist School. So by bringing the Tucson Art Academy Online to students out there is I'm sort of the filter of the quality behind the scenes of who we're bringing on. And it's really important because it gets very confusing for a student to know if that's a good teacher or not. So my job is that I actually know these artists and I've seen them teach. So it's really important to have that assurance that you're going to be on the right path of the things that you need to learn, the fundamental things.
So how does it work?
So you have a full year with the instructor, the ones that I just stated. And we use a private Facebook group. So you're part of a community of painters. There's a lot of Facebook groups out there, but the free ones, unfortunately, I've seen they're just horrible. Some of them, they're just like the stuff, the things that people say in there. You're not getting the right information. But here,
and then you're getting trolled to death.
Trolled to death, yeah, all that. Here, it's this is, you have to pay for this. So
the student would have access to that artist through Facebook or email, or is there like
email is through the Facebook? It's Facebook group, so you get to see the other students' suggestions too from the artist. So it's a nice library that you can scroll through. Also, in a way that, hey, what did Laura or Ken or any of these artists set to on this particular piece? And so it's not siloed. You have a community, but behind that is an actual recorded course. Behind it, it's a 4-module, I call it, and there's subgroups within each module that you're learning. So you have access to the instructions, full demonstrations, also. So it's combined with the online course part, and then your community, Facebook community, together is basically how it works. So you can send in an image to your instructor any time, and say, hey, I'm stuck with this part, or they kind of give you guidance. And again, the year is a good time where I think you'll build up some habits that they can correct some bad habits, possibly, hopefully, within a year time versus like 5 days, in a workshop of 4 days.
Right.
So, but again, physical workshops, they're awesome too. And plus you get to meet people. I'm sure you met people there at the Booth Museum that you might be friends for, years and years to come. So,
yeah, I met Ken Bacchus, Matt Smith, Ralph Oberg, and Jill Carver, and
You know him?
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Skip Whitcomb was there.
Well, yeah.
Len Schmiel. Yeah. I mean, all of these.
Yeah.
I just felt totally out of my league, but hey, I was glad I was there.
No, it's you hit a good one. That doesn't come around that often, that a group like that. So, but again, the digital platform now, it's amazing that we have this opportunity to sort of virtually connect and just learn. I mean, knowledge can come from different sources, and we have the internet now, and it's, I don't know, I'm all for that. So unfortunately, artists are still, and I'm talking about the ones that, teach, instead they're slowly kind of understanding this ecosystem. And it's a big change for everybody. Even major, big companies are still having, getting used to this. So imagine a fine artist. Yeah. So we had a physical workshop facility in Tucson for 5 years. And, I think we opened it in 2008, like the worst of times, right? And we had it for 5 years, and a lot of these great painters came down and taught the physical workshop for us. But then I saw, as the internet was evolving, that how can we bring this knowledge to more, more folks out there, into the world, basically open up the whole world to this knowledge. And that's kind of how the online academy was born. And, we're just, we really are blessed with the friendships that we built with the students too. And we like the artists are friends of ours, and life is short. You want to work with people that you enjoy working with, if you can.
And I just want to reassure my listeners, this is not a commercial for Tucson, but I believe in this type of instruction. I've personally have bought some of the downloadable videos and have enjoyed them. And I think this is a great resource. Not everybody can travel. Not everybody can afford, in-person workshops across the country. This is kind of a democratization of learning, something that you love.
Correct. Yeah, it's a tool. It's a tool. It's not. We don't teach any. There's no secrets here that we. None of our instructors teach. There's no such. If somebody says there's secrets to painting and art, like they're lying. There's no secrets. It's just a lot of work, hard work, but rewarding work, and that's kind of what the academy is all about. But people are still it's somewhat new, this online learning, and so we're having new students all the time. They're asking questions. How does this exactly work? They're not sure if you can actually teach the fundamentals online, and absolutely you can. I wouldn't have done this. I'm always thinking of you guys first, number one. Mm-hmm. Because if it's not working for you, then what's the point? What's the point in doing it? So I'm excited about just this whole internet, digital and everything, and I think it opened the doors for a lot of creative people out there. And I'm hoping that more and more painters are gonna tune into it, that you can actually learn fundamental things online.
So you have the podcast, Easel Insight, that you do with Phil Stark, and I really enjoy that podcast. But I understand that you have something else in development. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I started a podcast on my own. It's short. They're about like 3 minutes long, roughly. At least that's what I'm doing right now. And I'm talking about specific topics and something that, again, you can kind of digest. Maybe everybody's busy sometimes, so you just want to listen to something short. So that's kind of how I'm doing it right now, and it's called Concept to Canvas. That's the name of the podcast, and it's I'm hosted on Anchor, which is a new way of kind of hosting podcasts now. And but you can listen to on any podcast player that you may have, and they're topical. Like when I was talked about using a mirror in your studio, why I use it, these topical things that I think it's interesting to painters.
Very good. I'll provide a link for that in the show notes.
Great.
Can't wait to hear it. I'm always looking for new podcasts. I can't listen to them enough.
Yeah, they're fun. I listen to podcasts too. I think audio is definitely a thing that's going to continue to be a bigger and bigger thing for all of us. Obviously, with these new gadgets, where we have the what do they call it, Apple's thing too. So, or Alexa, I don't know. They have all these gadgets now, but there's not enough good podcasts out there about painting.
No, there isn't, and I hope that this one becomes one. So, well, you have certainly embraced internet technology, and you're all over the web. What's the best place for people to go? What's the one place you want them to go so that they can find out about all these different resources and tools that you have available?
So let's see. Of course, Tucson Art Academy Online is our academy. So Tucson Art Academy Online is one place definitely. We have easelinsight.com, very easy to remember, and also to my personal website. The easiest way to find me is just put Gbor Artist, just make it simple. It's my last name, fineart.com, which was, I don't know if it's the smartest URL that I came up with, but it is what it is. Just put in Gbor Artist, and I come up number one. And we have some stuff on YouTube. So at the Academy, we have, if you go onto our blog, we have a whole bunch of videos, free videos for you to learn from these sort of fundamental things that our instructors are teaching. So we love posting those. Love to educate on YouTube. So you go on YouTube, we have a YouTube channel too. It's Tucson Art Academy Online, and those videos are. And we have some old stuff on there too from the Physical Academy days too. If you go on there, like John Budison.
Oh, really? I didn't see those. Yeah, I'll have to go back and look for that. Yeah.
Yeah, Peggy Kroll, Robert Peggy, and Ray Roberts, and so those were fun years. I enjoy. I do miss the sometimes the physical aspect of it, meeting the students. So that's, I don't know. It's one of these things that we're busy with this right now with our digital academy, but. We needed to work on that to bring it up to speed, and that took a lot of effort. But it's just joy to hear people when we get these emails that, hey, with this stuff, sometimes people have physical disabilities too. They cannot travel to a workshop, and we have that, and for whatever reason, and that's huge when you can get high quality education, right in your studio.
It's an international market too. Yeah,
exactly. That's why I tell the artists, I go, listen, this is to the world. This is not just the US. We're opened up to the world now. And as long as you speak English, basically that's kind of the key to the courses. Then you can take the course. So, but it's evolving. I mean, the internet is evolving. And you were in, did you say computers? I remember that you said in film or?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Do all of it. Yeah.
I mean, that world has been changed. I mean, it's changing.
It has. Yeah.
Gosh. So yeah.
It's
the last ones. We're the last Mohicans, right?
Yeah.
Right. We thought like, no, this digital stuff. No, I don't care. Whatever. That's for the young people. And look, it's game over. It touched us. It brought it. I was saying like years ago, if it's going through like governments and the banking system, you think that paintings and fine art and teaching is not going to get touched by digital? It's ridiculous.
Well, Gbor, thank you so much for being on the Artful Painter. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show.
You're welcome. You're a great interviewer, so you ask good questions, which I think that's also you have a gift for that. So.
Well, thank you. I certainly enjoyed that conversation with Gbor Svagrik, and I hope you did too. Now, I have links in the show notes to all the websites and online resources that Gbor mentioned in this episode. I've purchased some of the videos that are available at Tucson Art Academy, and they're very nicely done. I really benefited from them. And the thing is, I've watched them multiple times. You can't just watch it once. You have to, but that's the nice thing about having these videos is you can go back and rewatch something over and over again until you
you figure out what's going on there. So that's really a cool resource for artists. If you want to make sure that you don't miss a future episode of this podcast, I encourage you to go to my website. That's carlolson.tv, or you can type in theartfulpainter.com. Both go to the same place. There's an email sign-up form on the homepage. Sign up for that email, and what will happen is each time I release a new episode, I'll send out a email campaign to everyone that has signed up, and so that you're alerted to the podcast. Of course, another way to do that is to subscribe in your favorite podcast listening application, whether that's on Android, iOS, PC, or Mac. I love hearing from you. I got a couple of brief notes this week that I want to share with you. One is from Jim. He says, just a note to thank you for being a terrific interviewer and asking all the right questions that lead to answers which help us to become better artists. Jim, I certainly appreciate that. He goes on to mention that he's a 77-year-old who is still learning. Good for you, Jim. I really appreciate that. And thank you for contacting me and for your encouraging words. Also, Pete wrote in a brief message. He says, thank you for the Andrew Tischler podcast and all the links. Great stuff. Well, Pete, I am so happy you enjoyed it. So what about you? You have a question, a comment, some feedback? Just send me an email through my website. Thank you for listening to The Artful Painter. I really appreciate your support. It's your turn now. It's time to take your earbuds out and go out there and paint something amazing.
Picture on the TV.